Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the November 2023 meeting of the Garden State Vintage Stock Car Club. During our meetings, it's always very enjoyable to talk to former race drivers, retired drivers about their career. One of the great drivers in the early days at Wall Stadium and of New Jersey Shore Area Racing was Bill Pfister, one of the earliest champions at Wall Stadium in the modified division. Sadly, Bill has passed away. We remember his great career. We remember him always as a fine racer. We're very honored tonight to have Bill Pfister Jr. with us, who grew up around his dad's racing, heard the stories as a youngster, and he's going to share a lot of those stories with us tonight. Please welcome Bill Pfister Jr. to our meeting. Bill, it's great having you here.
Thank you, sir.
As I mentioned, you kind of grew up around the racing legacy of your father. Let's start off, tell us about what you saw as a youngster growing up around your dad's race shop, and then we'll talk about your dad's career.
He didn't have a shop. My recollections are of him entirely as a driver. Okay. He drove for, among other people, Alice Ann's dad.
Alice Ann again?
Yes, in the 50s.
Frank DeRosa.
Frank DeRosa. There was, as far as I know, there was a two-car stable of modifieds, and he drove one of them. Frank drove the other. As you mentioned, he was the first champion at Wall Stadium, and he won 18 features that year. And that record stands to this day.
Amazing.
Part of the reason for that, other than I had a fast car, the car he was driving was numbered to 109.
Okay.
He had a friend, Dale Wainwright, who was, I believe, the chief mechanic on the car, and I'm sure my father did work as well. But it was the first modified, as far as I know, to ever have fuel injection in it. And he was the only one that had it in 1951, and he would run not only Wall Stadium, but also I have seen material showing him in Lanham, Maryland. You know, I've heard stories from him about Patterson and certainly Old Bridge. I was old enough to see him at Old Bridge and Wall, of course, and I'm not sure of any place else. A lot of those places are probably gone. But he was pretty full-time in the early 50s.
Was he what would you call a professional race driver of his time? What did he do during the week?
He was a machinist.
Okay.
The last at least 30 years of his life, he was working for a company called D&D Tool in Eatontown. They were what you would call a job shop. They made parts for military aircraft, landing gears, pistons, valves, sleeves. And he did primarily the finish grinding. I worked in there too.
Did you?
Yeah, you got to get through school. Restaurants were paying $1.60 to be a busboy, and I could make $2.50, you know, drilling holes. So, but I learned skills, none of which are relevant anymore, but I got to the point where I was the quality control man, and before that I did a lot of the finish grinding as well. So, there's that. But before that, he worked for an outfit called Frequency Engineering, which was on Shafto Road in Tinton Falls. They used to call it Wyckoff Road, and other places as well. Next question.
Well, as I recall, you mentioning your dad early on driving the 109, and Dale Wainwright was very involved in that. That's when Wall was affiliated with NASCAR, correct? So your dad was a NASCAR driver.
It was brand new in 1950. There's a publicity photo that I know Frankie is in.
Frankie Schneider.
Yeah, and understand that Bill and Frankie were pretty good friends. So whenever I talk about Frankie, it's going to be him. On the front straight, I think that it was originally constructed as dirt, high bank dirt, same shape and size, and then asphalt was applied for the 51 season.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what I know. I wasn't around.
No.
You know, I've got pictures and I've talked to people over the years, et cetera, and so on about it. He was a track champ that year in 51. He was second that year in modified points for NASCAR. Wally Campbell ended up winning the title. What I heard about that is that, well, he ran 4 nights a week. I only ran 3. If I'd have run 4, I'd have been the champ. Wally, of course, died early. I brought pictures and stuff. One of them in there is from September of 1950, and there's 5 guys at the table looking happy, and Wally is one of them.
So you know what? We'll hold up a minute. We'll get those pictures, and you can display them for the camera here.
Okay. So there was a bar or a tavern in Long Branch when Long Branch was still running, and they would give the feature winner a steak dinner. And one night, as far as I know, my father won a feature at Long Branch in this car sometime in 1950.
Okay, that's the number 71.
Right.
Okay.
There's 2 pictures of it here.
Oh yeah, great picture. The Ryan's Garage number 71.
Yeah, no, I
Bill
know
Victor
nothing
Lee.
about that car. It looks like it's got a flathead in it.
Yes, it does.
Okay. What am I looking for? Oh, this one. So this photograph I'm going to hold up in a second was taken, there's, the old man wrote on the back of all his pictures at some point. And this is a picture taken, as far as I know, in this bar in Long Branch. My father is seated back left against the wall.
Yeah, this is your dad?
That's my dad right there
Bill Pfister right here.
with the antelope sweater that was very, very heavy. Next to him against the wall is Bill McCarthy, who won a couple of track championships at Wall and had the Flying Zero. At one point he had a car named the 123. It was a blue wagon with a white top. My dad drove that for a while. Next to Bill is Gordon Oldfield, who was the first sportsman champion at Wall. And far right is Wally Campbell, hamming it up. I don't know who the gentleman on the far left is.
He's got a cigarette.
Yeah, but he's got a cigarette.
And it says on the back, September 1950. And remember leaving the bar, going to Max's for a hot dog on the boardwalk. There you go. What
Yeah,
race drivers did.
He actually flipped on Route 36 near the Eatontown Circle at the time. One of his good friends, Pippi Lopar, went by, thought he was dead. He was in a coma for 5 days. And that was 1950.
Wow.
Can you
And I
pass
think
them around?
I'm sorry?
Can you pass them around?
Yeah. And I think this photograph was taken on the night he got hurt. Yeah, you took him over to the gentleman.
Just the one that you talk about.
Oh, okay.
You know, you want to talk about.
So, I followed my father around like a puppy.
Well, the other car we see there is a number 88, looks like.
Yeah, that was also a flathead. He drove in either, I think it was 57 that he drove that car.
Oh, it's an 880. Is that Frank Rapaldi's car?
I have no idea.
Okay, it certainly looks like an orange coupe number 88.
It's not Bolander, is it?
No, it's not.
Frankie drove?
Yeah, it's not Johnny Bolander's.
Here's a better picture of it.
Oh, yeah. This is right here, the number 88?
880. 880.
880, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, again, there's writing on the back of them, but what I remember about the writing is he liked the people, he loved the car, he liked the people. It ran better than a lot of V8s at the time in 57.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
won a feature in Old Bridge with it. And actually, he was passing Don Stumpf for the lead at Wall one night. And apparently they came together. He ended up in the fence, and that was the end of that car. But Don Stumpf won the NASCAR Sportsman title
Yes.
in 57.
Yeah, Jim?
Oh, that's cool.
That's a Mark one, that picture?
This is the Mark one.
Yeah.
That was the 880.
Lenny Brown also drove that car.
Yeah, a lot of people drove this car.
Here's the Mark One,
Hold that up.
which, according to Bill Pfister Sr.'s writing on the back, the car never did handle, but ran a 300-lap race at Wall without brakes, and still finished third.
Yeah, he lost the brakes on the 27th lap when he was winning the race. And he ended up 7 laps down to Tommy Elliott. That was the first 300 lapper they had.
1957.
Right? 59, I believe.
First Garden State Classic, yeah, 1957. Yeah.
Okay, well, that
So that was
was-
pretty impressive.
That was 59, but there's another picture here. Parker Bone was lapping him. He was running third, late in the race. And the old man had been tight, oh, I didn't bring it, the whole night. And Parker ended up upside down in the fence.
Probably with some words after the races between Parker
Yeah.
and their dad.
Well, I don't know one way or another, but I don't think they were the best of friends.
Really?
They were competitors for 20 years, you know, from the very late 40s through when my father was done in basically 67.
Okay.
When we would go to Wall, when I'm a kid, we sat usually one or maybe 2 sections off the 4th corner towards the start-finish line.
Right.
And Mrs. Bone would sit either above us or below us, or one section to the left or one section to the right. And it was always a little you know, evil eye going back and forth. I was fortunate enough to meet Parker's grandson, Danny,
Oh, nice.
a few years back. He was working for Ray Evernham at the time.
Right.
And he came up and towed Frankie Schneider's modified down to North Carolina.
Yes.
I sold him that car for Frankie. And then I told you, when all that was going on, Eddie was working for Ray as well. And we got on the phone, and it was a half an hour later before we breathed, because we had so much in common growing up in parallel universes
Yes.
at the same time. It was kind of neat. I'd like to meet him someday and have a beer,
Oh, that'd be great.
you know, but I haven't yet.
So it's Turkey Derby, they'll be there.
Yeah, they're coming up?
Oh, they should be.
Yeah. Good.
Now, you mentioned Frankie Schneider. Did your dad ever tell you stories about his friendship with Frankie, different things they did, trips they made as racers or friends?
Well, in the very early 50s, like I'm speaking of really 51, my father was traveling a lot with the car, and Frankie was traveling a lot with the Boeing Air 88, and Wally Campbell was all over the place too. And from what I can see, they were the three hotshots.
That's neat.
Your dad would have been how old back then when Wall first opened?
He was born in 27.
Okay.
He joined the Air Force as soon as he turned 18 in 1946. 19. Frankie was born in 26. And the old man actually, he dropped out of high school, not being much of a Rhodes Scholar, and really learned to drive, driving a cab in Red Bank during World War II.
Really?
Yeah. And then he joined the Air Force, and he was stationed in Arizona, and if he could get a weekend pass, he'd go to wherever the local race was and drive open wheel cars.
So that's where he first drove a stock car in Arizona?
I don't think it was a stock car. I think it was a midget.
Really? Okay, very interesting. As a young guy too.
Yeah. I mean, the one guy, he knew Billy Vukovich Sr. at that time. I don't know how or why or what the interaction or the relationship was. Came home in 1948. And I think started driving in 49. Certainly by 1950 he was.
Now I mentioned at the outset, Bill, that you hung around your dad's shop, but as you said, he really didn't have a shop. Did he drive mostly for the car owners of the day? That he didn't build his own cars? That he was more of a hired driver?
I think he knew how to build them, and I think he did, but he never owned them.
He was in.
In demand as a top driver.
For a while there, yeah. I mean, he was Elvis before Elvis was Elvis, Seriously.
Yeah.
There was, I know I mentioned it the last time I was here, but I screwed up and went through life as an attorney. And don't hold it against me, please. But one of the court attendants heard my name, asked me if I was related, and I showed him. My father got a gold watch for winning the 1951 championship. And no, that's not it. He had a picture of the old man that was immaculate that he kept for like 45 years. And then one day he gave it to me
Oh, nice.
in like 1995, and I thought it was one of these, but I'm not sure which one it was. So yeah, I guess, he was hot shit for a while.
I mentioned to Bill before we were talking earlier this evening that when I was a young fan going to Wall Stadium, the first time I went there was 1960 with my dad, and people there, the fans, and of course all the statistics, the stories of the time, talked about Bill Pfister being Wall Stadium's first modified champion, all the races he won. And at that time in 1960, Bill wasn't racing. But then in 1963, Bill came back ran at Wall Stadium that year, driving the number 010 coupe. And as I mentioned to Bill, that was the first time I had actually seen Bill Pfister Sr. race. And I was so impressed because now I was actually seeing the driver I'd always heard about. That particular car, Bill, that 010, we mentioned that was actually a sportsman car when the sportsman ran with the modifieds. And you were probably right around, 10 years old at that time when your dad?
63, I was 6 or 7.
Okay. Do you recall
I saw that car.
Tell us about that. I remember it was a beautiful car.
We took a ride. Well, like I said, I think I followed my father around like a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go with him at some point when he would visit different people, whether it was this car or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember him talking to the owner about, well, apparently the car plowed, as they used to say, about changing the leaf springs in the back of the car to give it more turn. And the guy wouldn't do it. So that's what I remember about that car. I never saw it race.
Okay.
I saw, what else did I mean, the last good ride he had was a sportsman for Danny McLaughlin, father of Dan McLaughlin, who is fairly recently retired.
Is that the white number 38?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. What again? I saw that car up close. I knew the owner a little bit, who was still driving at that time, or who was driving at that time. Dan was younger than my dad,
Right.
and he was having a modified built for him.
Dan was.
Danny was. And he allowed, so my father got to ride in the 38. And as long as he had it, he was outrunning all the other sportsmen with the exception of Parker Bone, who was about I think about a half a car length quicker down the back straightaway than any other sportsman.
And that's what Parker had, the 659 of Tom Skinner.
Yes, that made all the funny noises and was the GMC, whatever it was, and sometimes they had to put masking tape. So you guys can probably bid on it and buy it now if you want. It's 7 acres of.
Not so prime land.
No, not so prime. When we first started, we got a dumpster, a 30-yard dumpster from the county for free, and somehow we got a second 30-yard dumpster, and we filled both dumpsters with racing tires.
Oh, wow.
Nothing but from around the property. And there's still probably another 125 there. Incredible. So.
Quite a story.
Well, it's one of them. Yeah, I mean, off and on I knew the guy.
Yeah.
He was a true legend, there's no doubt about it.
No, I made the mistake. So I'm a senior in college, and it's January 1978. And I have to go back to school and start class, I think, Monday. But on either Friday or Saturday, I went down to Atlantic City. Frankie was running a midget
Oh, yes. Yeah.
indoors on a little bitty track.
Boardwalk Hall. Yeah.
Right, that's about the size of this room.
Right, you're going to TPU. Yeah.
My father went down. I went down. I'm 21 years old. I'm feeling my oats. Because we're going out after the races, and I'm drinking with Frankie Schneider. Right? Well, we get out, and it's 1:30, and I'm ready to crash. And Frankie's just putting it into third gear at the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, so he showed you the town.
No, it was one bar, but
That's all I'm talking.
he showed me his liver. Yeah, I mean, he, God bless him, he could do that at that point in time, because he was 52, 51,
Okay.
51 then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what surprised, one of the things that amazes me is he was able to drive well into his 40s and 50s competitively
Yes.
before they had power steering.
Right.
And as far as I know, not that I'm a genius or know anything as much as any of these gentlemen or ladies that are here, but that was a big deal, because then a little guy could compete with the big muscular guy that was still driving. I mean, I remember from, back in the day, everybody had forearms like this from wheeling the car around.
Frankie was very, very slight.
He was 150 pounds, maybe 160. You know, 5'7", maybe 5'8". I mean, physically, he and my father were pretty much the same,
Right.
except Frankie gave up cigarettes and was able to go a lot longer.
Yeah.
So,
You had quite a racing life yourself.
well, we would go to Wall Stadium on Saturday nights, like I said, and try not to sit too close to Parker Bones' family. And then go up into the pits when the racing was done, or I was at Old Bridge a few times. You know, sitting with Mrs. McCarthy if she went with us,
Oh, that's neat.
or whoever,
Yeah.
or whoever.
Do we have some questions from the audience for Bill?
One,
Yeah, Vic, Patty?
there's always been a rumor going around that a lot of Frankie's cars got buried on the farm. Do you know anything about that?
To repeat the question,
I
there was a
heard the
rumor
question.
that there were cars buried around the property of
I
Frankie
can tell
Schneider's.
you, they haven't dug any up yet. The Old Best, they called it, this sedan, still exists. A guy by the name of Bill Kirchner owns it, and he started going there. He was a local up there, hanging around when he was probably 12 or 14. And he was on the pit crew and was extremely dedicated to Frankie. And he was given the car. He wants to be buried in it.
Oh, wow.
You'll see him on the racing sites, but he's the one that's showing the skeleton of Old Bess.
Okay.
There was a sedan that was a number 2
Right.
as well. That car is gone. There is a replica out there of it, but it's not the original.
That's the one in North Carolina, isn't it? With the name spelled two different ways?
I'm not sure, but it's a show car, you know.
Got a Ford in it.
There was, what was the guy that, with the famous car builder that built?
Grant King?
Grant King. He had a King car.
Right.
I remember seeing it. Matter of fact, that car is still around and somebody still owns it. And it'll get shown once in a while.
Is that Joe Tetz? maybe?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, his father was Gary Tetz was an
Yes.
engine guy. And Joe owns it now. It's clean as a whistle. I've seen it 3 or 4 times.
Right.
The other one, the other number 2 sedan is the one that just got donated to the Flemington Historical Society from
Yeah,
Ray
I was
Everham.
gonna tell you, there's one, a coupe we had at one of our shows at the museum. It's still original, is not
Right.
gonna be restored and
That's all that.
old best of, or maybe one,
No, it's not Old Bess. It's the
whatever, it's a coupe though.
yeah. But that car is the one. It's now up at the Flemington Museum.
Okay.
I sold that car to Ray Everham on Frankie's behalf.
Did you?
Yeah, I was doing work for the family at that point in time, and Frankie didn't have possession of the car. I had to sue somebody to get the car back. I was able to settle that, buy the car back, and used the rest of the proceeds from Mr. Evernham to pay back taxes on the property. And I didn't charge him for it either. That was like a year and a half's worth of work.
That's the Pinto, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
That's the Pinto, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's up in Flemington now. I don't have my phone, but I've got pictures on my phone of the day that Ray took possession of it. It was in a trailer with some other mementos, you know. I think the NASCAR championship trophy is no longer in there. I think that Frankie 3 gave it to his son, Frankie 4. I think he's got it. But in that trailer was all kinds of trophies, you know, from those 100 lappers or 200 lappers that he won in the early 60s, and he had an engine that he found in a junkyard down in Vineland with a broken block. He had the block repaired and then put it in the number 2 sedan and won a lot of races with
Amazing.
it. No, I mean, there were, I don't understand, but Darlene told me about how he invented something so that you could run either a Ford or a Chevy in the car without changing the whole transmission, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, personally, I didn't know him real well, a little bit. When I got involved with him and his family the last few years of his life,
Right.
he didn't have any memory left.
That's true.
Darlene said he remembered my father, but he had no clue who I was. And I had been up there before, long ago and far away.
Mhm.
So,
Well, Bill, you've had a kind of a treasured racing life yourself. I mean, growing up, around your dad and meeting all those people that, raced with him and the memories you shared with us. It's been quite a ride for you.
well, I don't know about that. It's just my life. I mean,
Thanks for being here tonight, Bill, and sharing with us.
there's more to tell.
Oh,
but,
we'll have to do a
You can
Bill
do
Pfister
another
Jr. sequel.
Yeah, okay.
We'll definitely do that.
I have,
And bring some more pictures and
Yeah,
share some
well,
more memories.
I got some more pictures here if anybody wants to see them.
So we'll wrap it up tonight, and we'll definitely have you back again at one of our next meetings, and we'll talk some more, because this is what the folks want to hear, the true stories.
Well, I enjoyed this just to make a record of it for whoever sees the video,
Absolutely.
and I mean, I've got his scrapbook, I've got the last of the trophies at home. Like I said, he was second in NASCAR modified division in '51. I have that trophy. I have the first 100 lap race that he won at Wall. I have that trophy and a couple others.
By all means, next meeting, bring them here, and we'll talk about them as well.
Okay.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Bill Pfister Jr.